Well, before moving on to the next topic, we'll recap the syllabus that we have covered so far. Recap in the sense is not a complete detailed recap, but it is just looking for the outline of the topics that we have discussed so far. Before this T2 examination, we have done this. We have done with this need to study of concept of programming languages, history of programming languages, characteristics of good programming language. So this particular introduction we did it. Next we have gone for the formal grammars, that is lexical analysis in the compiler design. In this we have gone for the lexical analysis, then we have gone for formal grammars, then Chomsky hierarchy of formal grammars, type 1, type 2, type 3 grammars. Then we have seen the DFA construction, then minimizing of the DFA and NFA construction, then attributed grammar, weakness in the grammars. Then we have gone for the left derivation and right derivation, then derivation trees, ambiguity, checking for the ambiguities in the grammar. Then causes of ambiguity, removing ambiguity just like a Chomsky norm form that we have used that. Then Becker's norm form, converting the given context-free grammar into the Becker's norm form. These are the things that we have seen. Then we have moved on to the parsing techniques, which is the next stage of compiler design after lexical analysis. So in this parsing, we have seen one parsing technique per category. Under the top-down parsing, we have seen the LL of one parsing, that is left to right derivation of left to right moving of input with the leftmost derivation with one token look ahead. So this grammar we have seen, and in this we have also seen the first set construction, follow set construction, LL of one parse table construction, checking the given grammar is LL of 1 or not, and parsing the given string with respect to the given grammar. So this and all we have seen in this parsing top-down parsing technique. Then one more parsing technique under the bottom-up category, which is called LR parsing. So this LR parsing we have seen under the parsing techniques. So till LL of 1 parsing we have covered up to T1 examination. After T1 examination we have gone for LR of parsing technique. Then after discussing of the LR parsing technique, we have seen the data types concept. In this data types we have gone for the looking of elementary data types, then user defined data types, pointer types, type checking, type conversion. In this we have seen the function pointers, use of double pointers, single pointers, and how the memory allocation takes place, etc. Then we moved on to the expressions and assignment statements. In that arithmetic expressions, overloaded operators, type conversions, real and boolean expressions, short circuit evaluation, and side effects, mixed mode assignments. So these are the expressions and assignment statements related topics that we have seen. Then we move on to the subprograms, that is the design issues of the subprograms, local referencing environments, parameter passing mechanisms such as call by value, call by reference, and call by value reference, which are called in mode, out mode, and in out mode. Then how to call the subprograms directly, writing the generic subprograms, which are also said to be template functions, and template classes also we have seen. Then whether various design issues in this generic subprograms we have seen. Then user defined overloaded operators, that is operator overloading concept in C++. Next we move on to the subprograms with static and dynamic variables, and nested subprograms in just like in Python programming, how the Python programming supports nested subprograms. We have seen that. Then we have seen general way of defining the nested subprograms. Then what is meant by block? Block is in the sense it is just like creating opening and creating the content or creating the statements, or we can say it's not creating statements, we can say it is writing the statements within the flower brackets open and close. And if many number of variables are declared with the local scope and global scope, how the dynamic scoping can be implemented, that also we have seen. That means static scoping and dynamic scoping techniques we have seen. Then afterwards how the recursion will be managed by the compiler, that concepts we have seen. Next we will move on to this. We moved on to the storage management. Next we move on to the sequence control, that is implicit and explicit sequence control, statement level control structures, selection statements, iterative statements, and unconditional branching and guarded statements. So these are the most commonly known things. Much discussion is not required for this, because program control statements are divided into three categories. One is selection constructs, second one is iterative constructs, third one is jump statements. Under the selection constructs, if, else, nested if, and switch case are the selection constructs. Iterative constructs are while, do while, and for loop. These are the iterative statements. Then while coming to the jump statements, return, break, exit. Okay, these are the jump statements, and go to. Okay, go to. These are the commands which are especially used in the sequence control. So these are the basics of programming. So much discussion is not required on this. So that is the reason with 5 to 10 minutes discussion in middle, we just skipped this particular, just gone through this particular sequence control. Then we moved on to the storage management. In the storage management, how the storage for the local variables, global variables, function calls are maintained. So in this, how the stack storage will be maintained and heap storage will be maintained with the help of activation records, and with how the runtime stack will be grown, and these details, that is static link, dynamic link, these concepts we have seen in as part of this. That means this particular concept will also come under the implementing of the subprograms, that is while discussing about the dynamic scoping and static scoping. However, this storage management and implementing subprograms are somewhat related, because we should know how the subprograms are going to be implemented. Then only we can figure out okay, which how the control between the function calls will be maintained, and how the control between the function and nested functions are maintained. So in order to maintain this control, first of all it must be stored somewhere. That means it must be stored somewhere, means some storage allocation should be there for that. So the reason dealing with that storage management is also an important topic. That is reason we have gone to the storage management. So runtime elements requiring storage management phases, stack storage, heap storage, fixed and variable size elements. So these are the concepts we have seen. In this, the main important concepts are like this. That is garbage collection, manual garbage collection and automatic garbage collection, in which we have seen the automatic garbage collection, where we have gone to the three algorithms. One is reference counting algorithm, copy collection algorithm, and another thing is mark and sweep algorithm. Next, we move on to the event and exception handling. In this, what is meant by error, what is meant by bug? Bug means which is nothing but the error that is arised after the execution of the program. Error is nothing but it is a defect that caused at the time of compilation. Then exception is an abnormal condition which arises during the execution of the program. Event means something happened at a particular point in time. Exception handling, how these particular exceptions are handled in C++, Java, and in case of Python programming we have seen. Then we moved on to the support for the object-oriented programming, how the object-oriented design issues are considered in the various programming languages. And here in the syllabus, OOP in ADA, C++, C#, Java, Objective-C, Ruby, and Smalltalk was given. But at the beginning of our course, I have told you that we are going to discuss the concepts of the programming languages with reference to 4 languages, that is C, C++, Java, and Python, because these 4 languages are familiar to us. That is the reason we can go in deep of discussion during this particular topics. So that is the reason we have agreed upon discussion of these course topics with reference to C, C++, Java, and Python. Now the current topic, see these are the topics up to support for object-oriented programming will come for the T2 examination. So we have covered up to T2 examination syllabus. Then the next topics such as concurrent programming, functional programming, logic programming, and program correctness. These are the 4 topics will come for the will come under T3 examination. So now in this lecture I am going to start with the concurrent programming. Please remember the concurrent programming lectures will go for this is not the first and last lecture of the concurrent programming. However, 4 to 5 subsequent lectures will be there on concurrent programming, yes, which especially deals with the multi-threaded programming with in C++, Java and Python, and how the concurrency is maintained and how the message passing takes place, how the monitors and semaphores will work. These details we are going to see, these concepts we are going to see in detail and in depth in this 5 to 6 lectures. So hence don't miss the lectures because this is a very important and crucial topic for our current syllabus purpose and also for your interviews and campus placements.
Now we'll start with the concurrent programming. Here concurrent programming is also said to be multi-threading. We are going to see the concepts of multi-threading in the programming languages Java and C++. Before moving on to the discussion of multi-threading, these are the basic concepts one must know, such as multi-programming, multi-threading, multitasking, multiprocessing. See, these are the 4 different terminologies that are very confusing, and most of the students will get confused between what is multi-programming, multi-threading, multitasking and multiprocessing. Our concurrent programming is related to the multi-threading concept, but what actually this multi-programming, tasking, processing are, that everyone must know first. So for that, just to recall the operating system concepts that you have studied in the previous semesters. There you might have listened these terminologies: multi-programming, multi-threading and multiprocessing. Anyhow, I will explain in detail what these are, because without familiarity of these topics we cannot understand the concept of multi-threading, because multi-threading is a very important concept in the Java, C++ and Python programming languages, and is widely used in many of the applications, including desktop and web-based applications. So in order to understand these concepts, we must familiar with these 4 terminologies first. Then we should go on discussing or we should go on knowing these concepts, like what is meant by concurrent execution, what is meant by parallel execution, what is the difference between these two. Next is how the resource allocation will happen. When the concurrent execution is going on, then there must be some synchronization. Synchronization is just like a playing of orchestra. A singer is singing in the front end and a group of musicians playing their musical instruments in the background. So there should be a proper synchronization within the music troupe and also along with the singer. So this is here the music troupe is doing their own task execution. At the same time, they should also be in synchronous with the musicians. At the same time, all of them should also be in synchronous with the singer. At the same time, vice versa. That is, singer should also be in synchronous with the musicians. So here the concurrent executions are going on. How the synchronization is maintained. So in order to maintain the synchronization, and how to maintain this particular synchronization, when some shared variables are available or shared data is available, that deals with the monitors and semaphore concepts. So these are the very important concepts that you must know before moving on to the in-depth discussion on the concurrent programming.
So to this end, let we'll see the concepts: process versus thread, synchronization, multi-threading with Java programming, and multi-threading with C++. Let us now start with the discussion of multitasking. In this, before understanding, to understand this multitasking, let we'll go for a simple example. Let there exists two stations, A and B. There is an electrical engine which has to be moved from station A to station B. That means here the task of the engine is to move the engine from station A to station B. So the task is to move the moving of the engine from station A to station B. So this is an electrical engine. That means the power supply, the resources of power supply. Whenever the electricity comes into the engine, then the engine machine or engine motor will start. Then the corresponding the locopilot or driver in that particular engine will regulate the various jobs, such as checking the engine status, powering on the various terminals, and looking for the signals, blowing up the horn, and moving the train, regulating the speed. So all these things will be done by the driver or locopilot. So the given task is moving of engine from station A to station B. In order to move this engine from station A to station B, so one require two main things. One is driver, another is resource. The driver is responsible for doing various jobs, while in case of resource, depending upon the engine's manufacturing, whether it is electrical engine or diesel engine or any other engine, you are supposed to choose the resource. So without resource, the engine cannot move. Either it may be coal, diesel, or electrical power supply. So how much resource is important? That's in the same way driver is also important. Obviously, nowadays we are having driver based engines. If it is driver less engines, then the concept may be different, but assume that the driver based engines are there. So this driver will go for scheduling the jobs. So why you are calling it as jobs means jobs are the works that can be completed within specific time. So a job is a small work that can be completed within some specified time. So what are the different jobs that a driver has to perform? That is like checking the engine status, observing the panels in the sense of various electrical panels available in the engine. He has to check it. Next is observing the signals. Obviously, by observing the signals and with the control from the nearest railway station, the proceeding of the engine should take place. Next is moving the engine, regulating the speed. So these jobs has to be performed in a sequential way or maybe in zigzag way. However, the ultimate thing is to move the engine from station A to station B. And one thing, unless until all these jobs are completed, the given task cannot be completed. That means the proper observation or proper performance of these jobs will lead to the execution of the given task. So that means this is a general example. I hope so by this time you are clear that in order to perform a task, we need to do some set of jobs. These jobs may be done in any way. However, in these jobs we may have some priority oriented jobs, or some are less priority oriented jobs, or some are immediately to be done, these kind of things. So in whatever the way it is, but these jobs must be performed to execute this to complete this particular given task. So that reason we can say a task is a set of jobs. So a task is a set of jobs. Next, in order to do this task, we require a driver and resource. So in the computer terminology, this driver is our CPU or processor. So the driver in our computer terminology is CPU or processor. The resource is our main memory or memory. So without memory, you cannot perform any processing things in computer. And even though you have a powerful processor, without memory you cannot do anything. Even though you have a large memory, you cannot work with the processor without processor. So the reason processor and memory are both are required. So in order to execute this task, you require to have a processor. That means this task consisting of set of jobs. So how these jobs should be regulated, okay, and which job should be executed first, all these things will be done by the processor. So just to recall the operating systems concept, in this you have seen CPU scheduling algorithms. That is first come first serve, round robin. These kind of algorithms you might have studied in the operating system. That means CPU scheduling. CPU will perform execution of the task in which CPU's choice is to choose which job to be executed based upon the algorithm it implements. That means if it uses first come first serve algorithm, that means whatever the job will be there in the task set, that will be executed first. In case of round robin, there will be different rounds. For every round some fixed time will be allocated. Within the time how much a job will be executed, that much it will execute, and it will save the status, and it will pick up the next job and will execute that job for certain fixed amount of time. Like that in rounds, the execution will go on. This is called round robin scheduling. So like that the CPU will perform the job execution. Once all these jobs are executed, then the given task will be executed. So where these jobs will be executed, or where this particular task will be executed, these tasks will be executed without these tasks cannot be executed without the support of memory. That means all these jobs must be loaded into the memory. Without loading into the memory, we cannot perform, or the CPU cannot perform execution. So this is what the basic idea how our CPU processor, CPU or processor, or resource, that is memory, and how set of jobs are going to be executed in a given task. So if at the same time a computer is trying to manage two or more tasks, that is, if a CPU or processor is trying to execute two or more tasks, then that particular situation is said to be multitasking. So every task consisting of set of jobs. So like that, multiple tasks are going to be handled by your processor at one time. So that situation is said to be multitasking. So when the computers were invented, users are allowed to submit only one task at a time. But later, because of the high speed processors evolving, then one can submit multiple tasks. So sometimes to assess this driver in the engine, there will be co-locopilot or co-driver. So we can also understand a driver which is who is the main processor who will do the main tasks, and there may be a co-processor which is attached with the processor. Usually these co-processors will do the floating point operations, etc. So in this way, the coordination between the processor and co-processor will take place, so that the task execution will become faster. So the capability of the operating system to accept one or more tasks per a user is considered as multitasking. That means many of the operating systems nowadays are multi-user operating systems. That means multiple users can log in and can run their the users can run their tasks. Like that, here multiple users can run multiple tasks at a same time, so that the CPU can handle the execution of these tasks. That means, for example, user 1 logged into the system and he started doing one or two tasks, then he logged out, and second user may log in and he may do two or three tasks, he may run two or three tasks. That means he may open a notepad or MS Word or any other thing, and he can log out from that while executing the while still the tasks are in working. He can log out, and user 3 can enter log in into the system, and he can do the tasks. So that means here three users are there at present, and these three users in their login particular tasks are executing. So if you look at in a top view, from top view, that is three users, multiple tasks. So that means per a user there may be a single task or multiple tasks executing, like that three different users with multiple tasks as a whole. So that in this way the multitasking will be carried out by the operating system. So this is the way of multitasking procedure. So in this basically there are two types of multitasking procedures. One is a single user multitasking, another is multi-user multitasking. That means many of the operating systems nowadays will support multi-user multitasking. That means multiple users can log in and they can start their tasks simultaneously. These tasks will be executed by the operating system. The best example is multi-user multitasking in the in the Unix operating system. You can go to multiple users logins, and you can start the whatever the task you want in each user's login account, and once the tasks are executed, the final result will be stored at your login itself. So this is what multitasking means. Now we'll see what is meant by multiprocessing. In the early stages of the computers, there will be most of the computers with a single processing unit. That means only one processor will be there, which will do the tasks. But later on, the CPUs are with the multiprocessor units. Most of the CPUs nowadays are multiprocessor units, means with minimum 2 cores will be available. 2 or more number of cores are said to be multiprocessing units or multiprocessing CPUs. So multiprocessing systems is nothing but when one system is connected to consisting of more than one processor, which collectively works for completion of a specific task or one task. It is called as a multiprocessing system. Previously one processor, one task, but here two or more processors are trying to work on one task. So this is what is called multiprocessing. So these multiprocessing systems can be divided into two types. Those are first one is symmetric multiprocessing, second one is asymmetric multiprocessing. In the symmetric multiprocessing, basically the operating system will reside on one processor, and other processor dedicated for the user tasks. In case of asymmetric multiprocessing, the operating systems, the OS image will run on all available processors, or all processors simultaneously can run the user tasks. So this is what asymmetric multiprocessing. So in multiprocessing there are two categories: symmetric multiprocessing, in which the OS image will reside on one processor and other processors will do the user tasks. In case of asymmetric multiprocessing, all the processors will run the same copy of the OS. So please note that multiprocessing is a concept related to the hardware, that is CPU processors, that is multiprocessors of the multi-cores which is available in the CPU. It is nothing to do with the process. Okay. Next we will see the multi-programming concept. We'll see what is meant by a program. Basically, program is a static entity made up of program statements, the later defined as runtime behavior. Basically, program is very static in nature. It won't have any logical things. It is physical one that you can open in Notepad or something, you can see it.
where process is a dynamic entity that executes a program on a particular set of data.
So previously we have seen program is static entity and process is dynamic entity. So how it can be related? That means these two can be related. Process means a program which is under execution is said to be process. That means in order to execute a program, first of all it has to be loaded into the memory. Then one thing you are supposed to remember is every program should be loaded into the memory before execution. So once a program is loaded into the memory and ready for execution, this particular stage is called process. For example, if I say, if I have given you a pen drive and ask you to copy some contents, so during the copying process, while the files are going to copied into the, if I ask you whether the files are copied or not, so the answer that you say is the copying process is going on. That means copying process is going on. That what is the meaning of this process here? That means the copy program which is supposed to copy the content from the disk to this pen drive, that related program is loaded into the memory and it is under execution. So this stage is said to be process. So that is the reason this process is a dynamic entity, or we can say it has some logical content in a virtual environment, in a virtual way. So this process is a dynamic entity that executes a program on a particular set of data. So two or more processes could execute the same program, each using their own data and resources. We'll see that we'll see this in detail next. So like that, so you have to make a clear distinction between program and process here. A program is static entity and process is dynamic entity. So how many programs can be loaded into the memory at a time? Obviously, as the memory is sufficient, when the memory is sufficient, you can load as many number of programs as possible into the memory. So if you look at the schematic diagram of memory in operating systems, first the memory will be occupied by the OS image, then afterwards some programs will be loaded. Depending upon the programs that are need to be loaded and executed, the related program will be loaded into the memory. So if you think a memory schematic diagram, the first slot is occupied by the operating system's image, then program 1, program 2, program 3, like that any number of programs will be loaded into the memory depending upon the size constraints. Okay, so now when this program is loaded into the memory, obviously CPU will pick one program and will go for the execution. So a program which is loaded into the memory and ready for execution, this particular stage is called process. So in this particular execution, when the program is too long to execute, sometimes CPU may switch between the programs. That means CPU may switch between the programs. That means it may execute one program first, and because of the emergency or maybe because of the priority, another program may be picked up. So the old program status may be saved, and next program may be picked up and it may be executed. So like that, the CPU will switch the program, switch the control between back and forth between the programs. So during the switching of these programs back and forth, the state of the program will be saved in the CPU registers. This particular state is said to be process control block. This process control block consisting of the details of the program that is going to be executed, its ID, priority, is there any subprograms exist in this, or any, what is the control, these kind of things will be saved in the process control block, and this process control block will be saved in the CPU registers. And when another program is going to be picked up, so this first program's PCB will be saved into the CPU registers, and next program will be picked up. When the CPU is switching from the second program to the first program, obviously the second program's PCB should be saved, then first program's PCB should be revoked. Basically, loading the PCB back and forth into the memory to gain the control over the programs during the execution, considered as the heavyweight process. Means because the entire PCB data structure should be loaded and again should be read from, and based upon the previous stop point, the rest of the execution should start. So this is considered as the heavyweight process because you are switching between the programs. So this particular multi-programming is basically considered as the heavyweight process. So a program which is loaded into the memory and ready for execution is said to be process, and this PC process consisting of a data structure to keep track of the details, which is called PCB, and this PCB loading and saving and revoking of this PCB is somewhat considered as a heavyweight process, and for every of such of process there will be separate memory allocated, and switching between this memory locations is also a very difficult task, and also in one or another way it is also considered as a heavyweight process. Heavyweight in the sense it has to load, the process has to take more load. That is the reason it is said to be heavyweight. So this multi-programming is a good concept because at a time a CPU can do more than one program execution, but this saving and revoking of PCB is a somewhat difficult one. So that is the reason this is said to be a heavyweight process. So why can't we go for any lightweight process? That means this much storing of, that means entire storing of the process control block data structure and revoking. Instead of this, can't we go for any simpler method? This is what the idea behind the multi-threading. So before moving on to the multi-threading, let us summarize the multi-programming. The concurrent residency of more than one program in main memory is considered as multi-programming. Since multi-programs are resident in memory, as soon as the currently executing program finishes its execution, the next program is dispatched for its consumption. Also, if currently executing program asks for input output resources, then meanwhile another program is dispatched to the CPU for execution. This the currently executing program asking for input output resource, this particular situation is said to be interrupt. Okay, whenever any interrupt occurs, then CPU is free to execute any other program that is dispatched to the CPU. So the main objective of multi-program is to maximize the CPU utilization and efficient management of the main memory. But the main disadvantage is the multi-programming will give you result of heavyweight processing. That means the CPU has to do more work or more has to face more load of storing and revoking the data structures related to the program execution. So that reason, to overcome this, we are going for multi-threading concepts. While coming to the thread, a thread is a small program that will execute under process memory. Okay, please note it. It's not processor memory; it is process memory. That means for every process to execute, that means for a program to execute, there will be some memory allocated. So a thread is a small program that will execute under process memory, means the memory which is allocated to the process, within that memory space only this thread will execute. That means thread don't have a separate memory space, but it will take the memory, it will take a part of memory under the memory allocated to the process. So if you look at a process consisting of the components such as the program to be executed, the data on which the program will execute, resources required by the program, the status of the process execution, these are the components under the process. In the same way, under the threads also, we have for the threads also they have their own components. So a thread is also having its own data and status. Like a process having its own data and its status. In the same way, a thread is also having a data and status. So a thread, that means a process may consisting of one or more threads. If only one thread exists, then it should be single threaded process. Okay, and if it have multiple threads, then this is said to be multi-threaded process. Okay, so in thread model, each thread is associated with a process. A thread is an entity that executes by relying on code and resources holding by associated process. That means each thread is having its execution units such as code and resources. So several threads could be associated with a single process. That means in a process there could be one thread or maybe multiple threads. That is what the meaning of this. Those threads share the code and resources of the process. That means these threads will execute under the resources of the process. That is, will execute under the process memory. A thread allocates part of process's resource for its need. As we discussed previously, a thread has its own data and status. I hope by this time you come to know what is meant by thread. Thread is a small program which is having its own data and status and also having its own code and resources. But these are the things will be under the process control. That is the memory which is allocated to the process. Within that only the thread will execute. A process may consisting of a single thread or maybe multiple threads. I will tell you a simple example. With this you will come to know what is meant by process and what is meant by thread. Listen this example carefully. I have asked an electrician to repair a fan in my house. So the electrician has come and he has gone for checking of the fan, and he said that okay, some winding is having problem in the fan, so it need to be repaired. So then I asked, okay, how much is the amount that I need to pay for repairing this particular fan? Then he said that the amount to be paid is 200 rupees. Then I have given the contract to him to repair the fan. After 1 hour, he came along with 2 more assistants to assist him in repairing the fans. Now tell me, did I need to pay additional amount to those 2 assistants, or shall I need to pay only 200 rupees as the agreement done previously? So the answer is we need to pay only 200 rupees. The reason is we have made an agreement that to repair this fan we are supposed to pay 200 rupees to the electrician. This is what the agreement made between us, that is myself and the electrician. So it is immaterial that how many subordinates or how many assistants he may bring, but I need to pay only 200 rupees. So this is if you look it into the computer terminology, repairing fan is a process. Now to execute this process we have made a resource allocation of 200 rupees. Now the assistants who are working under the electricians are the threads. They will execute their tasks under the control of the electrician. That means the main thread. So the main thread will give the instructions to the child threads, that is subordinates, who are the subordinates or who are the assistants of the electrician. So these electricians, these subordinates or assistants will work under the control of the main thread, that is electrician. So, and at the same time, electrician, it is the responsibility of the electrician to allocate the resources to the assistants. That means depending upon the work they do, or depending upon their skill set, or depending upon their experience with the electrician, he will allocate the resource. The main resources was taken by me, from me, as 200 rupees, and this within this 200 rupees, some amount will be spent to these particular assistants. So when assume that if only electrician is available, no assistants are there, so obviously the time taken to do the task is somewhat more, compared to the with the help of assistants. That means the process of completing the repairing of the fan, the time to repair the fan will be in a shorter period if the sufficient assistants are there. That means the process of completing the task will be faster when the assistants are available. At the same time, the contractor, the contract giving person, is no need to pay any additional amount. Only the terms and conditions that I have made before, that much amount need to be given to the electrician, so that it is the responsibility of the electrician to give some amount to his assistants. In the same way, whenever a program is loaded into the memory and the memory allocation has been done to execute a process, so within that process memory, these threads will execute. That means if a program don't have any thread, the program itself is the main thread, like electrician, without assistants. If the program may have one or more threads, that means the main thread may have multiple assistants. But one thing you are supposed to remember, even though you have that electrician have assistants, but these assistants must be in under the control of the main electrician. At the same time, they should also be in synchronous with the main electrician. So this is the thread model actually. I hope by this example you might have understood that a thread is a small program, like electrical assistant is a small one who will work under the control of the electrician. Like that, thread is a small program that executes under the process memory. A process may consisting of one or more threads. If a process don't have multiple threads, whatever the thread or whatever the main thread is there, that will be the whole process. Okay, so it is the responsibility of the process to allocate the related memory, required memory for the threads. At the same time, each electrician is having his own experience set and his own skill set. In the same way, every thread, a thread has its own data and status. Here, electrical assistant is having his own data, at the same time status also. The status of the electrical assistant will come based upon his experience under the electrician's view. So if the senior assistant is there, that means he will be preferring the senior assistants first, then junior assistant. In the same way, every thread has its own data and status. So a thread allocates part of process resource for its needs. Several threads could be associated with single process. Obviously, under the main electrician, multiple assistants may work. Those threads share a code and resource for the process. Obviously, these assistants will share the code, and share the code means here share the work. That means one person may bring the screwdriver, another person may bring the winding, another person may go for unscrewing the fan or removing the fan from the ceiling. So these kind of activities they will do it. So each thread is associated with a process. Obviously, each assistant is associated with a electrician. A thread is an entity that executes by relying on code and resources holding by the associated process. So by this time you come to know what is meant by thread and what is meant by process. So thread will be under the process. Process is a whole picture, but thread is a picture which is under the control of processes. So control in normal program usually follows a single thread of execution. That means if no thread is available under the process, it is said to be single thread of execution. With what differentiates thread from normal process is shared memory, which is visible to all threads in the multi-threaded program. So in process there is a dedicated memory. Under the threads there is a shared memory. So whatever the 200 rupees I have given to the electrician will be distributed among themselves. How they will distribute, that we don't know. That is up to the electrician's wish. So a thread has much less overhead than the process. So is sometimes called lightweight process. Obviously assistants don't have much responsibility as the electrician have. So in the same way, the thread don't have much responsibility. That is, thread has much less overhead than the process. So is sometimes called lightweight process. But if without assistants, if the electrician try to do entire work, then he may feel it as a heavyweight process, because he has to perform lot of work in this. But because of the assistants, he will feel the entire task as somewhat lightweight. So in the same way, a thread has much less overhead than the process, so is sometimes called a lightweight process. Multi-threading allows an application to have multiple threads of execution running concurrently. That means one person is removing the fan, another person is bringing the screwdriver, another person is going for winding. So these works are going concurrently, so that the process of executing the work will be faster. So now we'll come to the difference between the concurrency and parallelism. Concurrent multi-threading system give the appearance of several tasks executing at once, but these tasks are actually splitting up into chunks that share the processor with chunks from other tasks. But in case of parallel systems, two tasks are actually performed simultaneously. Parallelism requires multi-CPU system, but concurrency can be achieved on single CPU system also. So in concurrency, if you feel the task is going on, the task 1 is here, but at the same time task 2 will also start. That means if one assistant is trying to bring the screwdriver, another assistant may go for cleaning of the fan and try to remove the fan. So when he brought the first assistant brought this screwdriver, and second assistant may try to remove the fan. The first assistant, during the time, he may go for fresh winding. Once the unscrewing fan was done, then already this particular execution of winding of a new winding might have completed by the first assistant. So the second assistant may take this particular new winding and may fit it into the fan. So this is the way how the concurrency works. So this particular way of, see, look at it, it's like a plugging, okay, plugging first task with the second task. So this is what they call this first task and second task is in perfect synchronization. Otherwise what will happen, task 1 will execute and task 2 will execute, then task 1 will execute, then task 2 will execute. But it is not like that. Task 1 and task 2 are doing simultaneously, are executing simultaneously. Just you recall the orchestra problem. That is, singer is singing the song, and in the background the orchestra of the musical orchestra with the musical instruments has to play in synchronous with the song, what she or he is singing. So this is what the thing called concurrency means. But in case of parallelism, task 1 don't have anything to do with task 2. So they will execute in the parallelly. They will execute parallelly with respect to time. So for this particular parallelism, you need to have multi-CPU system. But in case of concurrency, on single CPU also you can achieve this concurrency environment. So this is what the difference between the concurrency and parallelism. So in this lecture we have seen the main concepts that need to be understood. That is, one is multi-programming, multi-threading, multitasking and multiprocessing. So multi-programming means loading of multiple programs in main memory, so that the CPU will switch back and forth between the programs for execution. This particular situation is said to be multi-programming. In multi-programming, the task of switching the programs back and forth by the CPU is considered as heavyweight. So that reason this particular task is said to be heavyweight. Then while in case of multi-threading, actually a program loaded into the memory and ready for execution, that situation is said to be process. So for every process some memory will be allocated. But in case of threading, A thread is a small program that will execute under the process memory. A process may have single thread or maybe multiple threads. So if process don't have any thread, then it is said to be single thread of control. While in case of multitasking is the technique, just like in multiprogramming, how the CPU will switch back and forth between the tasks, between the programs. In the same way, in multitasking also, the CPU will switch back and forth between the multiple tasks under multiple users. Okay. In case of multiprocessing, this is execution of a task by multiple processors at one time. That means multiple processors that is which is in the CPU, that is multiple cores, are working towards execution of one task. So in this multiprocessing we have two categories. One is symmetric multiprocessing, second one is asymmetric multiprocessing. So this is what these are the concepts that we have seen in this lecture. If you have any doubts, please write the question on the Google Classroom wall, so that that will, whatever the questions are there, that I will try to cover in the next lecture. In the next lecture we'll see the rest of the things like concurrent execution. Already, okay, in this also we have seen the concurrent execution and parallel execution, and next we'll see the resource allocation, synchronization, monitor and semaphore. Then we'll move on to the concepts of how multi-threading is going to be implemented in Java, C++ and Python programming languages.